Welcome everyone to the 13th Annual Women's Leadership and Empowerment Conference. Today we are talking about how women can support and uplift women in leadership positions. I'm very excited about this panel lineup. We have some great panelists here today. I'm going to do a quick introduction and then I'm going to explain how the panel works, and then we're going to dive right in. We have Brenda, who is a former professor at the University of Sacred Heart, Tokyo, and is currently an advisor for leadership and internship programs in Japan. She has over 35 years of teaching experience, has carried out extensive research on women's leadership towards sustainable community development in both Asia and Africa, awarded grants by the Japanese Ministry of Education. Her focus has been in the active support and empowerment of women in small enterprise in Nepal, as well as educational leadership for Japanese and Nepali students through field research activities. Her passion for teaching and collaboration with others in creating a more equal and just society is her long-held goal. Please welcome Brenda. Next, we have Pam Borton. Pam, as a leading ICF Master Executive Coach, professional speaker, and author. Her background is 27 years of coaching Division I women's basketball. Yes, I was a basketball person myself. She led her team to the Final Four, Elite Eight, 3 straight Sweet 16s, and numerous NCAA tournament appearances. CEO and founder of On Point Next Level Leadership, a global leadership consulting firm. She has founded 2 nonprofits and sits on multiple boards, launching Team Women in 2011, an organization dedicated to empowering women through mentoring and professional development, and Empower Leadership Academy for girls. Pam is a coach, a consultant, an author, and we're really excited to have Pam. So welcome, Pam. Yay. Next, we have Deborah. Deborah is an associate professor in the Global Business Leadership Department and director of the Asian Studies program at the College of St. Benedict and St. George University. She holds a BA from the University of Notre Dame, an MBA from St. Louis University, and a PhD in comparative international development education with an emphasis on global leadership from University of Minnesota. She has taught courses on human resources, organizational behavior, management, strategy, and intercultural communication. Previously, Dr. Pembleton worked in international business, where she held various positions at IBM Corp and 3M Company. Please welcome Deborah. And then last but not least, we have Amanda. Amanda is based out of Houston. She has been all over the world, but just currently moved from Hawaii. For the past 15 years, it's been her mission and business to empower women. She firmly believes that we all go up together. Through her work in health and wellness, she has seen firsthand the effect of female empowerment on a deep physical and psychological level. Through performance, she's learned the importance of confidence and acceptance for everyone. Through her career as a business consultant, she has had the honor to foster female leaders into the world in business entrepreneurship. She believes she would be an asset to anyone who's looking to uplevel, or all women who's looking to uplevel their business development as well as their leadership game. She has not only AF Consulting as her current business, but she also has her hands in 6 other businesses, if not the CEO or a partner across several states, and just wrapping up her first book. So welcome, Amanda. Yay. Yeah. Yes, we're very excited. So ladies, I'm really excited about this panel. I think that it's a really important topic that we should have in many forms of discussion of how we can support and uplift women in leadership positions. I'm going to start with one thing that our panelists, even from last night, has done a lot of talks on about, why do you feel that women have a difficult time uplifting and supporting each other in leadership positions overall? And we're going to go round robin, and I'm going to start with Amanda.
That's a great question. I think women in general do want to support each other. I think that we want to, but there is a sense of competition, and I don't want to call it, I guess, yes, a sense of competition and almost a sense of inferiority and sort of an imposter syndrome that happens. I don't know whether it's completely brought on by a societal pressure or by our upbringing or just how we view ourselves in the world, but I think there's a disconnect in wanting to support each other and also not wanting to take away from our own place in the world. And I think some people have a hard time finding a balance between those two. For me, I'm definitely a competitive person. I don't see other women as a competition to me, but I can see that other people see me as a competition or see me as a threat to whether it's a job or a relationship or just an opinion that they have. And I think that it takes us and our personal selves to really foster a sense of community and a sense of overall support. And I think that not everybody is able to find that balance between supporting yourself and not seeming egotistical and supporting other women without seeming competitive or undermining them, or, you know, she's got an angle, she's kind of trying to be sneaky about it. She can't possibly be my friend unless she's trying to have an angle. And I think there's this, a lot of people have considered it to be a humorous thing that we try to make funny jokes about how women are catty behind your back, and it's become this, you know, self-perpetuating prophecy of women not supporting women because we are secretly undermining them, or, you know, after their jobs, after their man, after, you know, their place in the world. So I think that that's one of the reasons why it's been so difficult for women, is that there's this self-fulfilling prophecy of cattiness. And I know everybody here is trying to dispel that and trying to show that women can support women no matter what, and no matter where they are in the world, whether it's, yeah, I know that some of the panels have talked a little bit about the privilege, and obviously I'm from America, I understand the privilege of that, but I think it goes across all countries and all generations that women need to support women more.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. Deborah, how about you? Where do you feel why women might have a hard time supporting other women or uplifting other women in leadership positions?
I think that we're products of our environment to a certain extent. I think that there are many challenges for women in general, in that we are not necessarily being treated equally in the workplace, that we can be held to a higher standard than our male counterparts on many occasions. Sometimes we hesitate from advocating on our own behalf, and that would cause some hesitation and also maybe some belittling of others. We have strong voices, strong things to say, but I think sometimes we don't necessarily trust our own voices. And so that can also contribute to diminishing the voices of others. And I also, what I've seen is that men tend to do well at building alliances with other men and networking. And I would like to see women do a better job at building alliances. And I think that would help us to uplift one another. And then once we get into strong positions, sometimes we doubt ourselves. And sometimes when we doubt ourselves, we have that quote unquote imposter syndrome. Then again, it can contribute to doubting the success of others. So I think it all contributes to the environment in which we develop our careers and our relationships.
I love that. Being a product of our own environment and recognizing that can help us go a long way. So I appreciate those notes, Deborah. How about you, Brenda?
Yes, I agree with both Amanda and Pam. Just to add, thinking about it, there's just so many leadership positions available to women. And I think leadership has been defined by men, and that is, part of competition. I mean, competition is an embedded factor in that. So as there are not so many women in successful leadership positions or any very few mentors, I think that women see leadership as a competition. So I think that's a big issue. And another point, I guess, companies and organizations don't often encourage inclusiveness and cooperation. And so women, again, feel competitive. And then maybe referring to Pam, just the lack of trust in each other. And I think that really has a big impact. And therefore, we feel this urge to compete.
Absolutely. Thank you, Brenda. Pam, how about you, especially with your background in leading so many young women to high levels of competition? We've heard two ladies especially talk a lot about competition. So where do you feel that women might struggle supporting and uplifting other women in the leadership positions?
Well, I'm going to take a little bit of a different angle on this. I agree with what everyone said. But there's so much research out there that it starts at a young age. So whether you're 6, 7, 8 years old, with a level of maturity, these girls are watching their mothers, they're watching their sisters, but the bullying and the spreading of rumors, and now today with social media and the cattiness and isolating and excluding each other starts at such a young age with girls. And, that's one of the reasons why I started this Leadership Academy for girls. And I do, because I have such an extensive background working with 17 to 23-year-olds, and then also the younger group, is really trying to instill some of these behaviors and actions in these girls at a younger age, at a more formidable age. But like I said, there's so much research that it starts at a young age, and when they grow up, it is their own confidence, it's their own insecurities when they get older. So I truly believe if women are more confident in themselves and confident in their own skills, then they don't have to show up where they're pushing other women down, and instead pulling other women up and supporting them. And I think a lot of it has to do with our own confidence and our own insecurities on why we don't support other women. I believe in healthy competition. I believe in creating that type of environment for people in general. And, it really all comes down to developing those types of skills in our daughters and the people that are around us. But us as women in leadership positions is us being that bigger person and creating an inclusive and supportive environment to pull and help other women, rise up into those positions. It is getting a little bit better. It's not happening fast enough for women, but you see all over, even in the sports industry today, that women are now coaching in professional sports. There are women on staff. There's women coaching men. And we need more women that are setting an example and being supportive. But I really think it really comes down to our own insecurities, our own belief in ourselves, and our own confidence. And that's why that behavior happens, and other women treat other women like that, is because of how we feel about ourselves.
Absolutely. I appreciate that. And it is exciting to see. It's not enough. However, it is really exciting to see in a lot of countries how far we've come. I mean, I'm 46, and to see, when I was playing basketball, that was not a thing. In fact, the women's basketball league, professional basketball league, was just forming when I was playing. And so to see all these leaders, speaking about basketball, since you're a basketball star, see all these women leaders step up, it is refreshing. Now, I want to bring it back to something that several of you spoke, I think all of you actually spoke on this, is the confidence tool or piece, the belief in self, the imposter syndrome that we might all face at one point or another. And so I'm a big person and I'm a believer in like, give us some tools. How can, yes, we do definitely need to breathe this into our younger generations for those of us that have access and can be a guiding light for the younger generations, either of our own children or the community. And as an adult watching this with women, what are some tools or some ways that maybe they can work on their confidence level, their belief in self, or their imposter syndrome to help them step into the ability to not just, be a leader within themselves, but also uplift and support others. And Deborah, I'm going to come back to you first, please.
Well, actually, I was reflecting on Pam's comments about coaching and mentoring and supporting. And I think those are such valuable ways for women to encourage one another and benefit one another, and again, raise each other up. And so I think by being in a network that is very supportive like that, it helps you see examples of where people have overcome their self-doubt, their hesitation about speaking up in a meeting, their hesitation about asking for that raise or that promotion. So I think that being surrounded by others and being coached and mentored by others who have taken those steps, it encourages people to look within themselves and find their power within, so that they can then make those steps and move forward. And then when they get into those positions, they can bring others along with them because they have set the example and made that first step. So great segue, Lynn, because I was thinking about Pam's comment.
I love that. And I do want to say, because somebody else might say this too, is not just be in a network, but also creating your own network around you. Like there's both sides. So Brenda, how about you? What are some actionable items or some tools that individuals can do to build that confidence, that belief in self, or possibly overcome imposter syndrome?
Yeah, I think definitely I agree with Deborah and Pam, building a network. And I think the network shouldn't be just people that think like you, but also people that maybe think differently. Because in the real world, we're going to run into people who have, different opinions, or like we talked about before, very competitive, not in support of each other. So, being able to communicate, negotiate, understand other people, I think it's very important. Building the network, but not just people like you. I also think I agree with Pam, beginning very early. We have a young, actually mixed male and female leadership program. And the real purpose of that is to challenge gender bias and to think about, how we can encourage each other with a growth mindset for both young boys and girls, so that as they grow up, they will perhaps, hopefully, this next generation would have the same problems as we do. So perhaps those are a couple of tools or ideas I'm thinking of.
That's incredible. I think it is really important for us to not just teach our young girls how to be confident, stand up for themselves, but also teach our young boys how to respect and how to honor women in a different way than maybe our generations were taught. Pam, how about you?
Well, the good news is confidence can be developed, and confidence is a lifelong journey for all of us. And we have confidence, it's soaring, and then the next day it's at the bottom of the barrel. And, how do we boost our confidence all the time, daily? And, fortunately, that's something that I've had to do, and a skill that I've developed as a college basketball coach and now as an executive coach, that as a coach and as an individual, I instilled it in my players my entire life. So they can then learn how to develop their own confidence and keep it. And when they lose it, how do I develop that when I do lose that confidence. But a tool is really understanding, and executives need to have this, like understanding what my strengths are. Like we all have to know what our strengths are and what we do really, really well and what we leverage. And where do I get my energy and what are my natural tendencies? And the more that we know ourselves, the more that we are so self-aware, then we can stay in that lane. We can stay in that swim lane and continue to really hone those skills. It's also important to take risks and to fail. And I embrace failure. That is the biggest way that we can grow and learn. And I think learning and growing and continuing to develop new skills is a great way to develop confidence. The more that we're learning, the more that we stay curious, the more that we continue to strengthen and build on that confidence in more diverse areas. And the other thing is just, and I mentioned it a little bit, is that whole self-awareness. What am I doing when I lose my confidence? What is happening around me? And just really giving yourself a time limit. Okay, I'm going to doubt myself for 5 seconds or 3 seconds, and I have to move on to the next play. I've got to move on. So if we're able to move on quickly when we lose our confidence, that's a skill that we need to develop, not to hang on to it for hours or days or weeks or curl up into a fetal position. But a skill is like, what are those triggers? What is happening when I lose my confidence or I'm doubting myself? And then having the skill set that, bam, I got to be able to move on to the next play. As a coach, that's something that I had to instill into my elite athletes every single day, because they're playing in front of thousands of people and then millions of people on national television. Like, they have got to be able to fail, make a mistake in front of thousands of people, and move on to the next play quickly. And that is a skill that fortunately we all can develop.
I love that. Thanks, Pam. And Amanda, wrap us up.
I 100% agree with you, Pam. I think it's definitely a mindset shift. I think that all that doubt and that self-doubt and that just self-loathing comes from a sense of not really knowing how and why we came to that point. So you're right. It's a sense of self-awareness. How did you get to this point? Why are you thinking the way you're thinking? Is this because of the exact situation you're in, because of something from your childhood, because of some trigger that you weren't even aware of until you really sat down to reflect on it? And it's that mindset shift, that conscious choice to not fall into that. And I think that's an acquired, learned skill for a lot of people. Some people have it naturally. I do not have it naturally. As a kid, I definitely had a lot of depression, anger, and just a lot of internalization of all the things that happen around me. And I had to build an adaptability. And I think that's where the mindset shift comes in. You have to face those fears, face those triggers, decide and understand where they come from and why, and then consciously choose not to fall into that, to choose to be confident in the moment when you don't feel it. I mean, it's that kind of fake it till you make it scenario, where if you don't feel it in that exact moment, you've got to buck up and tell yourself that you are that way, even if you don't exactly feel it, and it will come. I mean, my mother, when I was a kid, I used to hate what she'd say, just smile anyway. And I don't want to say that you should just smile through any horrible hardship that's going on in your life, but the sentiment behind it was, you are good enough. You are confident, you can do it, you can learn about these things, but sometimes you've got to put on that brave face until the rest of your body and your mentality catches up to you, because that mindset shift takes time, it takes practice, and you're going to fail. You're going to fail gloriously 1,000 times over. And as you said, Pam, that's the best education you can get, because you're never going to learn as quickly from anything in your life as a massive failure. And the more you fail, it means the more you're trying, and the more you're growing, and the more you're trying to be a better person. And that is something we should encourage. And we were talking about how we raise our kids and how our kids view women and how they view themselves. And it's a big thing. I mean, there is some subtle gender biases and gender changes that I'm noticing even with my 4-year-old. So I think we have to teach them young. We have to teach them that failure is okay, that you don't have to be perfect, and then to shift their mindset into this world of empowerment for both men and women. You need to go forward with confidence and educate yourself and become a better person starts from the inside out.
Absolutely. I love that. I'm going to come back to actually you, Amanda, and Pam on this question, because first of all, you both spoke a lot about mindset, but also competition. And I've heard that a few times. Competition, the word competition, or the idea of competition, can be very negative in a lot of ways, especially when we're talking about women leadership. How do we change the perception from competition being negative to competition being positive, like a positive thing? And Pam, I'm going to come back to you first.
Well, obviously, throughout my whole life, competition was exciting. It was a positive thing, and I look at competition as getting better. I'm getting better if I'm competing. I like to put the word healthy competition. Even in the workplace, I work with many sales leaders, sales organizations, and people that are in sales are driven. They are action oriented. They are winners. They have goals. They've got quotas. They've got so many different things, and creating that healthy competition. And the key word is healthy. Creating that healthy competition within your own team. You have enough negative competition against your opponents and your competitors on the outside. But if you can create an environment of competition internally that's healthy, like rewarding people and recognizing people, sending people on trips, everybody around you gets better. You're raising the level of skills and drive and culture within your own team. And so now you're setting the bar higher. You're raising levels of expectation. You're creating that teamwork and that team atmosphere within your own team and within your own culture and within your own organization. So it helps everyone around you get better. I wouldn't want to be around people that weren't competitive. I want to be around people that are like-minded, and I want to get better. I don't want to be the smartest one or the best person in the room. That means I'm not growing. So I need other people around me that are challenging me, competing against me. And when I hired people, when I hired my staff, and today when I hire people, and even my clients, I want them to challenge me. I don't know everything. I'm not the smartest one in the room, but I want to continue to be a lifelong learner, and I want to learn from the people that are around me. So I only look at competition as healthy, and then we're creating a culture of winning and team and everything that competition means.
I love that. How about you, Amanda?
Definitely healthy competition. I am a very competitive person. Anybody who knows me personally is like, whoa, she's crazy. I definitely believe in healthy competition. And I think it's how we shift. It's again, it's a mindset thing. Well, anyway, the word escapes me, but I think it's important that we teach kids, adults, that competition isn't this toxic center of someone's better than you. I think with the shift in our culture and trying to create more equality, we've also taken away some of the benefits of having differences and being different and excelling in one place or another. And I think for both men and women, for boys and girls, it's important to teach them that competition will only make you a better, stronger person. Whatever you're trying to compete in, you're trying to compete with another person, yes, but it is an internal competition. Can you be better than you were yesterday? Can you be a better runner? Can you be better at math? Can you be better at whatever it is? It's not necessarily competing with Joe Blow down the street or Jane. It's about competing with yourself and making yourself a better person, because that's what really competition is. I mean, when you think about trying to compete, what are you competing for? Unless you're an Olympian, there isn't really a tangible thing that you're really competing for. Even when you win a business award or something else, I'm not trying to get that tangible item. That I'm trying to get better at doing what I do. And I think that's what we need to emphasize in kids too, is that You're not trying to get this tangible medal or a goal. I mean, yes, it's nice to have a trophy at the end of it, but I mean, for your basketball students, is it the trophy that they're really excited about? Or is it the fact that they trained hard, worked hard, got better, became more adaptable, and then saw success in that? So what you take away from that in the end isn't a plastic or metal or glass trophy. It's what happened inside of you. And I think we need to really push that competition is a good thing. Being different is a good thing. Somebody being better or worse than you isn't the bad part. I mean, you're just trying to get better in yourself, and that can only help you grow and help you expand onto every part of your life. If you're competing, it's not a negative thing. It's not a bad thing. It doesn't make you better or worse. It's just the act of learning, educating yourself, failing, and then rising above all of that.
I love that. Deborah and Brenda, I'm going to change it up slightly for you. Deborah, I'm going to come to you first. So same question, how do we squash the idea that competition is bad, and more of, because you have an HR background, organizational behavior, working with large corporations such as IBM and the 3M company. So how do leaders create a healthy competition environment versus the negative connotation that it has?
I want to certainly speak to a couple of comments that both Pam and Amanda stated. I think they both address some of my life's experiences in most of my career in corporate was actually in sales and marketing. And so meeting quotas and having enough sales calls and meeting goals those were my, that's how I made a living for many years in the corporate environment. So that type of competition is wonderful. I also have for many years was a runner. I certainly wasn't the type that Pam would have coached in front of thousands of people. But as Amanda mentioned, competing with oneself athletically, if you're a runner, to make sure that you're running faster than you did the day before, you had longer endurance. So yes, healthy competition is great. Competition is wonderful. What's important is that you place that competition in the appropriate venue. If you are in an environment where there is healthy competition, you're in a sales position, yes, that you're running, yes, competition is wonderful. But if you're in a meeting in which other people are sharing their ideas, yes, your ideas are great, but so are others. So are other ideas. And it's important to uplift those other ideas so that they contribute to the entire process that you're moving through. So it's important to understand when and where the competition is important, and so that you can shift that focus when necessary, and when it's important, so the entire team then is competing against another team perhaps, or competing with ideas that they may have had last year, but competing with ideas that are now not appropriate for today, for the market today. So maybe those ideas that they had last year were great, but they need to compete with what they did last year. But they're competing together as a team to move forward, and not competing with one another to see who gets the most visibility. So appropriately placed competition is important.
I love that. I love that. And Brenda, I want to change it up just a little bit, because you've worked so long and so intensely in the Asian and African market. So are we missing anything that maybe other countries, either in Japan or working with women in Nepal, how they view competition? Is there any learnings that we can learn from them, or how they maneuver competition?
Competition is seen rather negatively in Asia and I would say Africa as well. But I very much agree with Amanda, Pam, and Deborah. I think competition is definitely something that needs to be cultivated in a very positive way. Competition is here, for example, in Japan, is trying to get into a university, which is very, very, very competitive for the job market. I mean, it's the same everywhere, but certainly, for example, in the leadership program and the research I do with women, I try to generate a positive type of competition through team effort, and just looking at, you know, how women can sell the products better in the market and compete with one another in the marketplace. Those kinds of things that perhaps maybe aren't the same kind of competition as viewed in kind of the Western sense, but very important for women and, you know, for men alike. So yeah, definitely different, but I think there is this sense of competition, but in a less obvious way.
Thank you. Thank you. So speaking of job market, let's go to, and I'm going to go to you first, Deborah, a question that we had posted about labor market segmentation. How do we solve the segmentation of, or the divide? You know, we do have this huge movement, especially in the US, but globally, about diversity, inclusion, equity, and equality. However, it might not be quick enough. There's still separation and segmentation in the labor market. So what are some ways that we can change the mentality of this or solve this?
That's a really big question.
It is.
It's a really big question, and I wish I could give a quick answer, because there's been so much research based upon our current view of the labor market segmentation. I mean, I teach it from a theoretical standpoint, the way it is currently described in textbooks. But along with that, we have to understand that there is so much systemic inequalities built into the labor market. And so it's important that students and my students understand, and that economists as well, how those inequities, how those inequalities have been systemically built into the existence of the labor market itself, not just here in the United States, but internationally. And so by addressing those issues and by understanding that those inequities are built into the foundation that this labor market segmentation research is built upon, then I think gives students and professionals, working professionals and other researchers a more balanced view of how to interpret that type of data. It is important to look at things from more of a holistic perspective and understand the different factors that have contributed to how that labor market is segmented, and that inequality exists, and understand how then to overcome some of those inequities, so that there is more of a balanced and realistic view of how that labor market is being defined.
I love that, and it is a big can of worms, right? Major. But I love some of the points that you made. You know, let's get to the root of where it comes from. Let's have a realistic view and actually admit, right, that there is a problem, and then you know, really try to look at holistically and then figure out how to best move forward. So I love those points that you made. Brenda, I'm going to come to you next. Either in the Asian market, which I live in Thailand, so I definitely am getting the Asian perspective, at least in Thailand, of this labor market segmentation, not just male versus female, but also in other aspects. So what do you feel that are some things that we can do to change this mentality, or even possibly start to make change?
Right. Well, thinking about Japan, unfortunately, there should be policies, I think, broadly speaking, and Japan has really missed out on this. Basically, I guess it was in 2013, there were policies set aside for uplifting women so that women could shine, and it was really just getting women to work part-time or in contract work. So, nothing really was there to help women. So I think if we think of a solution, it's very difficult, but I think there needs to be some real work-life balance laws and some market labor policies. I know in Denmark, for example, they have very clear work-life balance laws where both men and women, of course, are given maternity, paternity leave. Women are supported through very good social benefits. They can take sabbaticals. They can take time for education. And there is a kind of work rotation where not only women but men are brought into the workforce that are unemployed, and they can then gain a permanent position through this part-time work and move in and become more sustainably employed and a future career. So I think it has to somehow come from the top, and it has to be mandated across companies. Otherwise, really nothing's going to happen. And I think the biggest problem is there really aren't enough women in leadership roles, whether in politics or business, to actually initiate and ensure that those policies or good practices are carried out.
Yeah, thank you, Brenda. How about you, Pam?
Well, I really, Amanda has said this a number of times. It's a mindset. I think it's a mindset, and it's a constant education to ourselves and everyone around us. So, we have to continue to talk about it. And it starts with hiring. It starts with the hiring practices and changing our mindsets and educating people on why, why we need to have diverse teams around us, and diverse thought. And it was interesting. Yesterday, I had a client walk in and was having a conversation with someone else, and they were talking about hiring for the specific position. And they just said, I just hire the best person. I just hire the best person for the position. That's not true today. You don't hire the best person for that position. You hire a diverse team. It's you as a leader making sure that you are plugging all the holes and filling the gaps, because you learn more. There's so much research out there on the more diverse your team is, the more profit, bottom line, the more that you're going to be able to connect with your clients and your customers, and profitability, and how to think different, and how to scale and grow your company, and how you can go global. You don't hire the best person for the position anymore. You hire a diverse team. And then once you get those individuals on your team and in your company, it's learning and growing and developing those individuals. But it starts with education. It starts with educating some of those executives and those leaders on really what do our hiring practices look like, and how important it is for us to make sure that we are surrounding ourselves with people that are so different than us. It makes us better. You look at people that are going to college, that are trying to get into law school, and they're put on the waiting list. They could have a 4.0. They could have had military background. They could be Navy SEAL quality, but they look at the cohorts that they are putting together in the law school or those classrooms, because those learning cohorts and those learning groups, they all need to learn from each other. Everybody can't be the same in that room, or it's doing every single one of them a disservice. They are not learning from each other. And so creating that environment and creating that culture of recruiting and hiring and best practices, it's really education and changing our mindsets around what that should look like.
I'm going to come back to that culture piece on the next question, because that's definitely huge. Amanda, I'm going to let you go ahead and answer this question first.
I have some differing views than what have been spoken right now, but I understand how it's perpetuated. So for me, it is systemic. I believe that it starts with our voices, that a lot of times culturally, because it is systemic, women have been told and taught to just comply and nod and smile and continue that conversation. And I think it's important that we voice it more and showcase that it is still an issue. And even though we have all these laws and rules and regulations that are kind of forced onto us, I think that it needs to come from a deeper place, because I know, Brenda, you're talking about having laws to put this in place, and I'm generally pretty against that kind of forcing people into it, but I see how that's important, because it started out the opposite. So it started out that there were literally laws preventing women from doing things, and I think it's interesting now that it's going to come full circle around repeating our own history, that we have to switch that and create laws so that men can't do things. And I think that's both terrible and enlightening in just how far we haven't come, because we're literally repeating history, and that we have to create laws so that people aren't horrible to each other. And that's because it's just, we've been doing it for so long that way, that now we're trying to undo centuries of oppression. And I think as long as we keep talking about it and keep pushing back on that system, that's what's important. And, you know, creating these rules within, I mean, I own my own business, so I'm 100% in control of who I hire and who I don't hire. And I definitely hire the people who I feel are the best fit, not necessarily to diversify my team, but what I found in finding who's the best fit, it is a diverse team. I am hiring people from all over in different countries, different genders, different backgrounds, because they are the best fit. And I think that when we try to box everybody in to, you must meet this requirement in order to be equal, I think we're forgetting to celebrate our differences. And so I think as long as women talk about and continually push this mindset shift and this, I mean, I keep saying mind shift as if it's the only thing that there is, but I think we need to embrace the fact that we are different and keep talking about how differences are good, and keep talking about how women have a completely different viewpoint, and it's an incredible one, and we need to keep pushing how important it is for us to voice our differences, and how important it is for us to voice that there is still this disparity, and we need to do something about it.
Thanks, Amanda. Thanks, ladies. I want to come back to the culture question, because definitely I love helping companies with creating a healthy, thrivable culture. And when we're talking about the job market or the labor market segmentation, Pam, you mentioned not only is it like in the beginning looking for that diversity and to really build a team of different thoughts, different backgrounds, etc. Now you have the team. How do you best build a culture in which all can thrive, right? So not just the women, which obviously this is a women's leadership and empowerment conference, so we definitely want to make sure that we're highlighting the women. However, I feel like this can be applied across all boards, like any gender. So what are some tools that individuals, either it be in a corporate position, in a leader position, in politics or in their community, or even their households, we create a family culture, right? And so how can we best create the most healthiest culture for our environment to support and uplift individuals, especially women in leadership positions? So a slightly different take on a question from before. And Pam, I'm going to throw it right back at you, because you were the one who heavily went into the culture aspect. And then I'm going to go around the room.
Yeah, well, I mean, culture is key. And, you know, I'm just going to go back, and this is the 50th year. This is the 50th anniversary for Title IX. And if we didn't have Title IX, you know, we're 50 years, like this year is our anniversary. We are in International, you know, History Month for women. And there's so many different things. There's laws that have been put in place for women to be on boards now and on public boards, because it's proven, you know, over 20 to 25% of profitability for companies is that diverse team, and creating that type of culture for people of learning and diverse thought is so important. And I think it all goes back to that culture is really understanding what our purpose is. You know, 21st century companies are purpose driven, and understanding what our purpose is. Our purpose is, and it goes back to our values then. You know, what are our values in our companies? And, you know, almost every company has an inclusive environment, you know, as part of one of their values. So it's really understanding, before you have a company, before you have a team, before any team is formed, you have to have a purpose. What's the purpose of this team? If we don't have a purpose, then we don't have a team. And I think that's so where many companies don't have a purpose. Teams don't have a purpose. So really it's that purpose-driven company in the 21st century. It's not about your mission statement anymore. It's not necessarily about all of those things that are so 20th century, but really being driven by that purpose and meaning really creates that culture of really, we're all here for the same reason. We're here for the greater good. It's bigger than us. Creating those values, creating those expectations, and making sure that each and every person that is around the table understands the value that they bring for the greater good, for the bottom line. It's like, what value do I bring? What value do you bring? And it's so important for everyone to feel that sense of belonging to a team for that culture. We talk about retention, and we talk about, you know, the labor market. Purpose-driven teams, purpose-driven organizations is how you keep people connected and belonging to a culture.
Absolutely. Thanks. Brenda, how about you? What's your take on how to build healthy cultures once you do have your team?
Well, I just have to say that there's no diversity in Japan to start with. So, I mean, it just doesn't happen. So therefore, I mean, we can see, as Pam says, you know, the companies that are successful have a diverse team and embrace diversity. And a lot of Japanese companies are not successful anymore, but they're learning. And I think, so I don't know if I'm answering your question, but I think that, you know, we have to look inward, and it's up to the leader, the CEO, the senior managers, to look inward and think about, you know, what kind of team and how can we be successful? And I think it's painful in Japan now, and I think, you know, that they're starting to see that, you know, it's a problem. But I think I definitely, you know, agree that having a diverse team and being cognizant of each other's qualities and what they can bring to the company is very important. So, you know, I think it's perhaps slowly happening in Japan, and I hope it comes about more quickly.
Excellent. Thank you. Deborah, how about you? With all your expertise, you know, we hear this saying that goes around, especially in the US, but I've heard it in other countries as well, giving people a seat at the table. And then really the culture is like, okay, what do you do at the table, right? So how do you engage with one another? So what would you say are some tools or some things that individuals need to be doing either individually or as a team to create that healthy culture to support and uplift women in leadership positions?
Well, first of all, let me say that I'm quite jealous that you're in Thailand, because I wish I were there with you. Thailand, I feel, is my second home. I love being in Thailand. I do a lot of research on Asian and Western management styles, and I think there was a comment in the chat about making sure that you understand what works in one culture may not work in another culture. So being able to understand that no matter what culture you're in is important, because it's important to know and identify where has harm been caused when there is not equality, when there's not an acceptance of everyone at the table. And so understanding, no matter the culture that you're operating in, where that harm has been caused. And then I also noticed in the comments a couple of words, and I hope I'm not butchering this, but the heart jai in Thailand, in the Thai language, jai coming from the heart. And then there was another comment about Ubuntu. I know I'm butchering this, but power in collaboration. So those are a couple of comments in the chat that I want to acknowledge, because they kind of lead to the atmosphere that is important to having a healthy culture that perhaps is reflective of the feminine perspective, that of having more empathy towards one another, having a greater tolerance of one another, not just tolerance, but beyond that, being accepting of one another within that environment. Understanding what is your long-term vision. Do you want to remain as a company? Do you want to remain relevant? Brenda mentioned some companies have gone out of business because they weren't able to respond. So is your goal to remain in business? In that way, you'll have to change how you do business to meet the changing culture. And sometimes that means being vulnerable to your to deficiencies that you may have, and then being able to address that. Sometimes that's not a part of what you're culturally aware of, and so addressing that cultural awareness or cultural lack of awareness is really, really important. And that's another area that I really focus on and train on, and that is building one's cultural competence, so that one can be successful in the long term, and their businesses or nonprofit organizations can be sustainable for the long term.
Absolutely. That is huge. And I was literally just having that conversation today with one of my clients here about the cultural training and understanding different cultures, because diversity inclusion isn't just in America. It's become very almost narrow in the way we look at diversity and inclusion and what makes a diverse team. And you just brought another whole aspect to it, not just in the US, but across the globe. Like, how can we be more aware of other people's cultures, maybe the holidays that they celebrate, the way that they look at life, maybe their struggles or their learnings or whatnot, and all of that plays a role into how we make a more diverse culture as a team. And so I love that you brought that up, because I think that that's an important tool. And I know being someone who's traveled all over the world, and I love experiencing new cultures, in the US, where I'm originally from, we can become very narrow in our thought and kind of egotistical in our way that the US is best. And we don't necessarily always pay attention to the actual cultural differences and how we can adopt and adapt those into our team setting. So I love that you brought that up. Thank you. Amanda, how about you?
Oh yes, America and your ethnocentric centers. Don't get me wrong, I love my country and I love everything about it, but there is definitely that sense of, America has to be the best at everything. And that does play into the culture. And I think it also plays into the company cultures that we create here. My own experiences, I have worked in other countries, but the majority of my experience working and owning companies has been in the United States. So I can only speak to that. But I think as a leader, we have to also understand that as the leader, we define the environment and we define the culture and we define the vision in our own companies. So even if you're not actually the C-suite within your company, if you're a manager or if you're just a senior employee, whatever that comes out to you, you as the leader, even if it's a leader just in your own small department, you are defining what your expectations are and what they should be. And I think you were talking a little bit about Pam, about the sort of dying of the mission statement. And I think in some respects that's true, because now I think it's more a vision statement versus a mission statement, or it should be. And I know that when I am coaching people to build their business plans, I feel like it needs to include a vision plan of how you want to see the culture and the diversity and the collaborations within your own company. You need to think about the value that you bring to your company is not just is not a static, one-sided, one-dimensional thing. I think as the leader of the group, we have to be the ones to instill that in the people who we are leading. So I think a lot of that cultural shift has to come from leadership. I think we have to be the ones to explain to the people that we are leading how we expect things to go and how we envision our company's imprint on the world. And I think that it's important that we shift the leadership's perception of that cultural inclusion and that how we want our environment to be. And, you know, I'm just reading a comment like, America is horrible at cultural agility. We don't do that. We're not really raised to do that. And I think it's important that we start that statement and start that conversation that there are 50,000 ways of doing one thing, and we need to promote that that's good, and that there are that there's room for all of that in the world in our leadership positions.
Excellent. Thanks, ladies. I think it was Deborah. Those are all great points, but I do want to get on the next question because there's so many questions and there's lots of information in the chat. So the next question, Deborah, I think you're the one who brought this up, and these were a few, when we were talking about this panel, this came up a lot, the difference between feminine and masculine in leadership, and how we use the feminine, how we use the masculine. And I've definitely, you know, seen a lot of dialogue and separation of the two, and one has become very negative versus one very empowering. So my question, or the question, is how do we embrace the feminine side, or the feminine and the masculine side together? So how do we, because everything has been so very masculine forward and patriarchal, right? So how can we show our feminine side and also embrace the masculine side as strong women on this panel? And so, Deborah, because I believe it was you who actually brought that up, I'm going to come back to you first, and then I'm going to go around the room.
Sure. I think I mentioned some of the attributes, such as being more empathetic in the workplace. There has to be a culture, though, that accepts that type of behavior as being reflective of what a true leader can have, qualities that a true leader can have, having that empathy, having that acceptance of others who are different, being unafraid, being bold enough to be vulnerable, and to not demonstrate that one knows it all and can do it all. Being able to set boundaries and understanding when to say no, I think are important aspects as well. There needs to be an understanding that caring is important. Caring about other people, having that being a part of the culture of that environment, and being sensitive as well to others' needs. Compassion is really critical as well, and I think these are all tend to be seen as feminine qualities, but I think they are qualities that can be incorporated into the overall work environment. And I think those traits certainly do deserve a place in business, or in an organization, I should say, not just in business, in academia as well. So being able just to connect leadership to the wholeness of a person, I think are really good perspectives, really good traits to have in the culture of an organization. So I hope I answered the question that you were asking.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that it definitely plays a part in the femininity and the masculinity aspect of it. And I appreciate those points for sure. Brenda, how about you? How can individuals embrace the feminine and the masculine, or bring more forward the feminine, or yeah, what's your take on this?
I think that really, the male, female qualities are really typecast, and they're based on the social construction of gender identities. But actually, both males and females, have the same qualities. They're basically, males have the energy of doing, we imagine. They're competitive, they're unemotional. Women, perhaps more compassionate, collaborative. But actually, both men and women have all of those qualities. But they're masked. So I think as a female, or as in a culture, I think that we should be genuine. I think we should embrace the energy that we have. For example, if we are good at organizing chaos, we should speak up and try to organize. As Deborah mentioned, I believe vulnerabilities. I think we should think about our vulnerabilities, and perhaps if we have an open environment in the workplace, discuss the issues that we have. Probably everyone, males and females, face the same vulnerabilities. And also, I think collaboration is really important. And as females, perhaps we have stronger collaborative instincts, and that helps not only to get the job done, but it also shines a light on women. And to use our sensibilities to develop a good work environment will really help both men and women. And I think most important of all is just believe in yourself is really very important for any females, males or females, within the workplace. And having that opportunity, if there's an inclusive environment, I think that can happen.
Absolutely, Brenda. Thank you. Amanda, we've had many conversations about this. And I do want to make one point that Brenda made, is that male versus female is very different than feminine versus masculine. Just because you're male doesn't mean you only hold masculine, and vice versa. And I think that that's one thing that a lot of individuals, especially those that are advocating for more femininity and more feminine power, can sometimes forget that we are a combination. We do have both within us. And so, Amanda, I want to bring this question over to you, and then Pam, I'm going to come to you, because I'm sure you have a lot of feedback on this particular question as well. So how do we honor both? How do we blend both? How do we honor it not just in ourselves, but others, right? And the level in which they play in the femininity and the masculinity.
I think it's important to note that you have to be your authentic self. I think in the business world, particularly in leadership positions, there's been a lot of emphasis placed on masculine energy, like you're a better leader because of XYZ, and that's masculine. And I think that's just, we call it masculine and feminine energy, but it's kind of just a construct that we've made up here, because men can be nurturing, not just women. Women can be domineering, not just men. And I think we need to embrace both sides of that. I know that in my personal life, I have often been considered as much more masculine, but that doesn't mean that I'm not a woman and that I don't have feminine qualities and traits. And it's not that I don't put those in my business, because when I'm leading and when I'm in a business environment and in a personal environment, I'm using both sides of those all the time simultaneously. And I think we need to, and this is actually almost a shift I think needs to happen for men, not for women, but men need to be okay. We need to foster that it's okay for men to have feminine energy and vice versa. I think we need to say that gender doesn't matter, and your feminine or versus masculine energy doesn't matter. You aren't a better or a worse leader simply because of that energy that you're feeling today. Just because you are empathetic doesn't mean that you are a pushover when it comes to business, and I think in leadership. And I think that there's these negative connotations with both female or with feminine and masculine energies, but we have to dispel those rumors, and we have to be authentic in who we are and embrace who we are, and embrace that in other people too, that you don't have to be one way to be a leader. There is no one way of being a leader. There's no one way of being. So I think we need to really emphasize that, particularly as we're educating and helping to our youth grow as into potential leaders. I think we need to instill in them that there is no right way or wrong way. There just is being who you are and being the best version of that. And whether that's masculine or feminine, whether that's, what's considered in our society to be more of a leadership role, I think we need to really look at why that is, and then teach those around us that the most important thing is to be who you are. Whether that falls within the spectrum of male, female shouldn't matter, because gender doesn't matter when it comes to being a good leader and being a good person. It has nothing to do with it at all.
Thanks, Amanda. How about you, Pam?
Oh, I think just the words of your feminine and masculine traits come out and make me cringe a little bit. It really does. I think it is all about our own styles and how our approach as a leader. It's not about, oh, my feminine side's coming out, my masculine side's coming out. It is about our own style and our approach. We're all very different, and my style, I'm sure, is very different than Deborah's style or Amanda's style. And we have to show up being our authentic self. It's so important for everyone to have soft skills and that emotional intelligence. And when women should be, I think the word aggressive, the word emotional is used when women are a little more dominant, or I'm results driven, or I'm a winner, or I'm going to challenge you, or, those are considered maybe masculine skills, but they're also in females. I come from the sports world, and everyone's driven, everyone's competitive. Our DNA is very different than most people's. We're wired differently, especially, in a Big Ten conference or an Olympian. Are those masculine tendencies? That just makes me cringe a little bit. I just think that's just who we are. That's how we show up. That's my style. That's my approach. There's times I have to lean into empathy and compassion and being more of a team player, and my humility and being more humble. There's other times I have to push and challenge, be a little more aggressive. There's other times that I have to be more analytical and more thoughtful. And there's other times I have to, jump into a networking situation, and I have to be less emotional and less driven. It's all situational. Who's my audience? Am I around executives? Am I around my team? Am I around kids? And I think leaders have to show up based on their audience, and be able to step in and out, zoom in and out of different situations. So to be honest with you, I just think it's soft skills, and we have to, no matter if you're male or female, we have to embrace and learn all different types of those emotional intelligence skills and those soft skills to be successful today, especially when we're leading behind a screen and we're leading global teams. We have to be extremely self-aware and be very nimble with our leadership skills and our style.
Well said. Well said. All right. I cannot believe we're almost coming to the end, ladies. Really, we have probably time for one more question, maybe two, depending on how things go. So I wanted to put it out to everyone to ask you, what is something that we can do today as women or as the men listening? And remember, this is a global audience. This is being broadcast across the world. So what can we do today? We obviously have access to internet, whoever's watching this, to be able to position ourselves so that way, regardless if we're a man or a woman, we can uplift and support the women leaders in our immediate circle, right? What can we do today? What is an actionable item that we can do right now to do this, regardless if it's in a corporation, if it's in our community, or in our personal lives. So I'm going to come back to Brenda first.
I think that we need to really listen and find out what the needs are. And again, you know, as I said before, we have to be genuine, that we really care about how to uplift men or women. And then we have to work together, collaborate. We have to be open to people's needs and to, you know, have a vision, share a vision, and work towards that vision. And it goes in steps, and there's always some backwards and forward steps, but really honestly working with each other and listening to each other, being open, flexible, and really caring, I think is very important.
Absolutely. Thank you. Pam, how about you?
Well, the first word, the one word that came to my mind is what can we all do today? I think it's really changing our mindsets around from manager to leader to now today in the 21st century is to approach everything as a coach. We are coaches. Coaches have to be leaders today. And what I mean by that is coaches inspire, they motivate, and they empower other people to be their best. And it's not about us as leaders, but it's how we get the best out of other people. And so we are all coaches, and it's the environment that we create, whether it's a competitive, a healthy, competitive, a little uncomfortable of an environment for people to always to continue to get better. But I would say show up as a coach, be that coach for other people, and inspire and motivate and empower other people every single day in everything that we do.
Love that. Amanda.
I agree. I think we need to, the only actionable item I can think of that can happen right now is we need to live and lead by example, because I can't control what anybody else does in the world, but I can control me usually. And I think that living and leading by example is the number one actionable item that we should all be embracing, that we might not be able to change the entire world all at once, but changing ourselves does have that ripple effect of changing the world. So live and lead by example.
Excellent. Deborah.
Well, since this is topic is about empowering women, I just want to, and I mentioned empathy a few times. I want to mention the fact that International Women's Day is coming up on March 8th. And so doing some self-reflection about empathy, I think is important. And I also think research is important. I go to catalystwomen.org, the Catalyst resource, and I do a great deal of research there on uplifting women. And they have a term there for CEO instead of E for executive. CEO is Chief Empathy Officer, which I love that title. So I think showing empathy for one another and understanding that you don't have to reinvent the wheel. Someone has probably tackled and been successful in overcoming an issue that you already have, So go to a resource like Catalyst, research your issue, and find an organization that may have tackled and overcome an issue that you have. Reach out to the organization, reach out to that leadership, build those alliances. And those alliances don't have to be in your neighborhood, in your state, in your country. It can be it can be global. Reach out to someone in Japan or Thailand, and understand how they may have tackled those same issues. Reach out to entrepreneurs like Amanda, Pam, and Brenda, my collaborators, and see what experiences they have had, which may have been in different industries than your own. So not only reach out to different types of organizations, but different types of different geographic areas, but different industries as well. Because you don't have to be alone. There are people who will be your supporter, your ally, as you navigate these treacherous waters.
I love that. And I love how you always just lead me up for the perfect free throw shot, since it's basketball here with Pam. Which I was not very good at free throws, but that's a whole other story. So resources, we do have a little bit of time. I'd love to hear if you have any actual resources that you would suggest. So this could be a book, this could be an author, this could be, and Deborah, you said catalyst.org, I think, a network that somebody can lean into to help them on this journey to uplift and support women in leadership positions. So I'm going to go to Pam, and I know I'm putting you on a spot for a resource, but the first thing that comes to mind.
Well, I do have to, I mean, Brene Brown, she obviously has written so many books on, you know, brave and vulnerability. Vulnerability is power. You know, a lot of the female women in tech clients that being vulnerable. I also want to, a great resource is my own book, The Crooked Rim. You know, this is around resilience, how to strengthen your resilience and master your mindset. I've written a couple of books, but, you know, Brene Brown is probably one of the best to develop some of those soft skills and that mindset based on research and her own experience. So those are some resources to really, to really embrace and tackle.
Absolutely. Amanda, how about you?
Well, obviously I want to say my own book because we know what we're talking about. I think that for each person, what you're looking for is going to be different. So I am a firm believer of reaching out into the podcast world, reaching out into the literary world. And as much as I kind of poo-poo Facebook and the world of that, there are a lot of networking groups. And I mean, you were saying we're always behind the screen now. So there's less and less of that in-person interaction, and there's more and more online venues for it. So whatever you're looking for, there is a group out there. And if there isn't, you should make one, because if you're looking for it and you're trying to find it, then you can be your own resource in the beginning of your own resource. I think a lot of times we rely so much on the outwardly influences that, you know, we're looking for answers, but sometimes the answers are within us, and that we can share that and create a community that will enable us to come together and find that education and find those resources, but we have to start it. So if you're not seeing something that is going to help you, if you're not seeing a resource that you're desperately looking for, then be the leader and be the one to create that resource. And then people will come to you, and you guys will all create together the resource that you need. I think that there's so much opportunity and so much access to that right now, particularly because we're all so very much behind the screen these days. I think that there is that opportunity to create and become your own resource and become the own outlet for that resource.
Absolutely. Deborah, how about you?
Well, I feel very privileged to be on the same panel with these great authors. And I have not, even though I've done a great deal of research, have not been the author of a book. But I will invite those listeners to reach out to me, and let's build something together. Maybe there's something that needs to be created that isn't created yet. And so let's build together. And so my offer is to work with me, and let's see what we can come up with. Because there are many gaps that need to be filled. And I'd love to work with anyone who's interested in filling those gaps. So my resource is a resource that doesn't exist yet, but I invite people to work with me to build it.
Thank you, Deborah. And Brenda, any resources that you could send people in that direction?
Yeah, I agree with Amanda, building your own community. And that's what actually we've done with students. But one that I think I like that my students really like, and that's it's called Just Mindset, changing the way you think to fulfill your potential. And it talks a lot about, having a flexible and open mindset, looking at your strengths, looking at your weaknesses, being positive about, the issues you face, So recommend that. It's a good, interesting, informative read.
Excellent. Thank you. Again, ladies, we appreciate you and your time on speaking at the 13th Annual Women's Leadership and Empowerment Conference. I cannot believe it's already been 90 minutes. All the thoughts and advice and just experience that you have shared upon us, wisdom about how women and men can support and uplift women in leadership positions has been phenomenal. Please, if any of these speakers spoke to you and you resonate with them, please connect with them on social media, through the Whova app, for those of you that are using and a part of our conference as an actual attendee and not just watching the live via Facebook. Please connect with them on the Whova app. Do not let the conversation stop here. This is where change happens. We continue this dialogue, we continue to have these difficult conversations, and we continue to have the breakthroughs in order to be able to support and uplift not just the women around us, but globally the women and the women to come in not just leadership positions, but also in life. So I appreciate all of you. Thank you all for watching. And for those of you watching the replay, please leave comments and all that great stuff in the chat. We'd love to see all of that in our Facebook live feed. We appreciate you, and we look forward to seeing what comes from this discussion. Thank you very much.